The Israeli Prime Minister said those who harm Israel will pay a heavy price, describing how the nation was already in a multi-front war with Iran and its proxies.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer says the government will develop a standing army to tackle the growing far-right riots.
Croatia has celebrated 29 years since its decisive Bosnian War storm offensive.
Israel is already in a multi-front war with Iran and its proxies, according to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He made the comments as the United States and allies prepare to defend Israel from an expected counterstrike, following the assassination of Hamas and Hezbollah leaders.
איראן ועושי דברה מבקשים להקיף אותנו בטבעת חנק של טרור בשבע חזיתות. התוקפנות הגלויה שלהם אינה יודעת שובע, אבל לא אלמן ישראל. אנו נחושים לעמוד מולם בכל חזית, בכל זירה, רחוקה כקרובה. כל מי שרוצח את אזרחינו, כל מי שפוגע במדינתנו, לא ינקה מאחריות. הוא ישלם מחיר כבד מאוד.
As fears of an all-out regional war mount, the French government urged its nationals to leave Lebanon as soon as possible. They could be seen arriving back in Paris airport as the situation becomes more tense.
Ce qui va arriver, donc on préfère rentrer en avance.
C'est une ambiance très toxique, très menaçante. Les médias parlent toujours de choses qui va se passer, une guerre ou une frappe au Liban.
Je suis très inquiète, bien sûr. On ne sait pas du tout qu'est-ce qui va arriver, comment les choses vont évoluer. Et on croise les doigts et on prie.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer said a standing army comprising specialist officers would be developed to manage far-right riots gripping the country. The justice system would also be, quote, ramped up to name roughly 400 offenders arrested as part of the violence, he said.
And we will not tolerate attacks on mosques or our Muslim communities. So the full force of the law will be visited on all those who are identified as having taken part in these activities.
Starmer held an urgent meeting with cabinet members and intelligence officials at number 10 Downing Street to tackle far-right protests spreading throughout Britain. The lawlessness started after 3 girls were stabbed to death in a dance class in the English town of Southport. Misinformation on social media about the identity of the alleged perpetrator pitted rioters against immigrants and the Muslim community, leading to attacks on asylum seeker centres and hospitalised police officers.
"73 migrants were rescued at sea by non-profit organisation Doctors Without Borders. The NGO performed 2 rescue operations off the Libyan coast. On Friday night, the organization helped 47 people after their boat got into trouble. And on Saturday morning, another 26 people were rescued from another boat, all safely boarded onto a rescue ship that is now heading to its assigned port of Ravenna in Italy. The NGO says that 2 people refused help on Friday, but were assisted later by 2 unmarked boats that identified themselves as the Libyan Coast Guard. And also on Saturday, the Libyan Coast Guard was spotted taking 80 migrants from an overcrowded dinghy.
Bulgaria will hold its 7th parliamentary elections in just over 3 years after the main parties failed to form a government. The Researcher People ITN party returns to 3rd government-forming mandates to President Rumen Radev, unfulfilled on Monday. Chair of the ITN parliamentary group said the parties had been unable to find common ground.
Ако има някакъв позитивизъм в това, което се случи, е, че в крайна сметка ние разговаряхме с всички политически партии без една. Нито първия мандат разговаря с всички политически партии, да не говорим за втория.
President Radev is expected to appoint a caretaker prime minister and schedule new elections within 2 months.
Спиралата от избори без резултат продължава да се завихря и това вече не само предизвиква разбираемо раздразнение, но и отключва редица деструктивни процеси. Блокаж на редица институции, отчуждение на гражданите от демократичният механизъм на изборите.
Political stalemate in Bulgaria has hampered its efforts to participate in Europe's Schengen area.
Wildfires are scorching Albania and Croatia as blistering heat grips the continent. Albanian firefighters could be seen battling flames in villages near the capital city of Tirana. Over 300 firefighters and military personnel were supported by a helicopter to control fires in the country's central eastern region. Hundreds of hectares of forests have already gone up in flames. Police have arrested at least 5 people for setting fires and called on hunters to be careful as the country battles a heatwave. High temperatures, winds and weeks of drought have accelerated the spread of wildfires in Albania and other Balkan countries like Croatia, forcing local residents to evacuate. Firefighters have been battling massive blazes in Croatia, which have already consumed hundreds of hectares of pine forest and vegetation. More than 1,200 hectares have already gone up in flames as fire sites ignite across the country.
French authorities are using discretionary powers under an anti-terror law to keep those they deem to be potential security threats away from the Olympics. Those subject to the measures are largely from minority backgrounds, particularly from former French colonies. Many have been forbidden from leaving their neighbourhoods and ordered to report to police on a daily basis. 21-year-old bank apprentice Amin, who was born in France, is among those affected. He is not allowed to leave his South Paris suburb despite having no criminal record.
Cette restriction, elle va durer 3 mois. Ça fait déjà 1 mois que j'y suis. Donc elle va se terminer le 29 septembre, donc dans 2 mois. Très honnêtement, cette restriction, elle m'atteint directement sur ma santé mentale. C'est très dur au quotidien de devoir vivre cela. Je ne peux malheureusement plus voir ma famille.
Amin was flagged to police after posting a TikTok video in October of him wearing a Deportivo Palestino t-shirt and making obscene gestures towards the Eiffel Tower, which was lit in Israeli colours following the October 7th attacks. However, he was also falsely linked with an account on the video sharing app Rave, which posted decapitation images and comments expressing a desire to join a terror group and kill LGBTQ+ people. French Interior Minister Gérald Darmanin says the restrictions are in place to prevent very dangerous people from attacking the games. He claims minorities aren't being singled out and that people suspected of left or right-wing extremism are under surveillance too.
From the hot landscapes of North Africa to the cooler climates of Northern Europe, migratory birds rely on ancient heathlands like these for crucial rest and resources during their journey to breeding grounds. But rising temperatures are challenging these delicate ecosystems. As one vital link in this chain weakens, the next becomes increasingly crucial.
When you've got migratory species, birds in particular, they are travelling huge distances. When you overlay climate to that, at what point do those habitats actually become too hot for both the migratory and the resident species?
Recent data from the Copernicus Climate Change Service has recorded even higher surface temperatures this year compared to last, accompanied by a significant surge in ozone levels this week. With heatwaves currently sweeping across Europe, heathlands in Denmark, the Netherlands, Germany and Britain serve as essential pit stops for these birds. This year's heatwave has led to a concerning 15% decline in some bird populations.
Tree pipit is just about hanging on. If that bird, having made the journey from sub-Saharan Africa, encounters conditions that are not optimal when it arrives, will we see those again? So I think absolute key is for people to work together, the exchange of knowledge as well. But
before Brexit, Neil Lister co-led a European partnership funded by the EU, focusing on cross-border conservation. He's found that maintaining these channels of communication is essential, even in the face of a changing political landscape.
It's always nice to know that that contact is there, the channels of communication are there, and that way of working is not completely lost.
As climate change continues to impact these regions, preserving these critical resting areas and the biodiversity they support remains a key focus for conservationists across Europe. Luke Hanrahan, Euronews, Suffolk.
Military parades have taken place in Croatia to mark the 29th anniversary of the last major battle of the Croatian War of Independence. The 1995 Operation Storm offensive was a decisive moment in Croatia's war with Bosnia and resulted in the recovery of territory from rebel Serb forces. The event is commemorated annually and this year saw speeches from Croatia's leaders, military displays and a flyover of fighter jets recently acquired from France. Croatian Prime Minister Andrej Plenković hailed the anniversary as a celebration of freedom.
Mi smo se danas okupili da još jednom proslavimo slobodu, da se prisjetimo veličanstvene Oluje, neustrašivosti hrvatskih branitelja i svih onih koji su nam omogućili da živimo u neovisnoj i demokratskoj Hrvatskoj. O tome su generacije Hrvata sanjale, a danas je naša stvarnost i odgovornost.
But for Serbia, the anniversary is a somber reminder of what it considers a war crime that led to the mass exodus of most Serbs from Croatia. Each year, thousands of Serbs, including families of victims, gather to mark the anniversary with a remembrance ceremony.